It doesn't matter if you don't understand something, it just matters how you respond. You will be asked questions, and it's really in your best interest to predict what you're gonna be asked. Hey there, and welcome on in to some tips about how to improve your speaking in language orals. I did the International Baccalaureate where I did French standard level. I had never done French before. I'd actually done Spanish in the earlier years, so I was really far behind. But I found some really useful tips that can really help out your grade and ended up getting A's and A+ in practically all of my orals. So I'm going to share some of those today, and I hope any one of them are helpful to you. My first point, very simple, very fundamental. Do your research in your mother tongue, but more importantly, in the target language. This may seem obvious, but I think it's very common for people to do all their research in, say, English, if that's your first language, and then just translate everything. This is not a good idea. Not only if you're using Google Translate will this probably be incorrect translations, please do not do this, but also you're missing out on a lot of great ways to boost your mark just by exposing yourself to articles and concepts within the target language. What I mean by this is that you're going to be exposed to way more technical jargon and lingo if you read articles in the target language. For example, if I'm reading up on renewable energy, I'm going to find a lot of French specific examples if I read up on French literature surrounding that topic that I can then bring up in my presentation or debate, and that's going to really impress your teacher because you're clearly demonstrating an understanding of French culture and customs. Maybe not so much for renewable energy, but you get the idea that you're actually talking about French specific examples. For example, the topic is on food, right? You want to talk about French food and French cultures around eating in French. That's going to be way more impressive than if you just talk for ages about eating in England. I know that seems obvious, but if you're doing all of your research in English, that's going to be the kind of points you come up with. So I recommend starting off with your mother tongue just to get an understanding of what your points are going to be or what you want to talk more about, and then move over to French or whatever it is the language that you're learning. I think for most courses, a section of the curriculum and mark scheme is related to your understanding of that language's culture and traditions. So it's really worth looking at specific examples for this. My second point adds a little bit more work in for you, but really worth it. Prepare your points and your counterpoints. This is honestly a good point for any kind of debates, but if you're doing your language debates or if you just have a presentation, this is still relevant. You want to be able to predict what other people are going to say so that you are better prepared. This is especially true if you're not anywhere near fluent in the language and you're not very good at thinking on your feet. That doesn't matter, you just need to have a good idea about what you think people will ask you. So for example, any major points you bring up, you should probably suspect your teacher might ask you to develop on that, or anything that may sound a bit confusing. To avoid awkward silences after your presentation when you're asked a question you do not know the answer to, just brainstorm some ideas of what you think you'll be asked on. Refer to the curriculum and also any major points you bring up that you think will spike interest in your teacher. And if this is specific to debates, which was a section of the IB, you have a group presentation, which is a debate. I would spend as much time developing my points as I would the opposition's points and what I think they would talk about, so that not only would I have my rebuttals to their points, but you could also have your own criticisms to points you think they might bring up, so you really sound like you're on it. My next point, you want to practice your presentation or debate points a lot, but please do not just read from a script. I feel like a lot of people do this, especially in perhaps GCSE level or A levels. I know a lot of my friends did this. Don't do this, I beg. I know it seems simple, but first of all, it's incredibly strenuous to revise an entire script and learn it by memory. But also, that is not going to help you in the long run at all. It's going to leave your short-term memory the moment the assessment's over, and that is not going to help you out when you get to later exams where this topic is brought up again. Every single assessment and test you have is for a reason, it's part of the curriculum, and it's going to be brought up again in your final exams. So if I actually learn a lot about renewable energy, specific to French or otherwise, in my final written exam, there may be a letter to a local government on renewable energy, or there may be a section in a reading comprehension about renewable energy. Revision is going to be so much easier if you already have all of your research and developed points that you actually have in your long-term memory from this initial oral, as opposed to just looking at a script that you somehow revised and memorized months ago that you have no idea how to then move into a written assessment, for example. This goes back to one of my first videos, which was specific to revision techniques with spaced repetition. With every little assessment you have during the year, that will be a form of spaced repetition where you are learning more about renewable energy, for example. So then your end of year revision is going to be so much easier, I promise you. So I know it may seem like an easy way out to memorize a script, but I promise you, in the long run, you're going to be thankful that you actually knew what you were talking about. Plus, this goes back to my last point about being ready for rogue questions. If you just have a script memorized, someone asks you a question that was not on your script, what are you going to do? You need to be ready to answer anything. My last point seems very simple, but it works wonders in making you sound far more fluent. It doesn't matter if you don't understand something, it just matters how you respond. I will explain this. So your teacher is not expecting you, likely, to be fluent, anywhere close. We're all just learning here, especially if you're in GCSE level or something. They just want to see that you can manage your way around the language. So importantly, never speak in your mother tongue during your oral exam. It doesn't matter how confused you are, please do not do this. This is where you will lose marks. But beforehand, just being confused is not going to drop marks for you. So my recommendation is to learn a couple of phrases that you can give out when you're a bit stumped by a question. For example, can you please rephrase that, or can you please repeat the question? Don't say something just like, je ne sais pas, I don't know. It's still good that you said that in French, but at the end of the day, it doesn't give them much leeway. You want to give them the opportunity to rephrase the question and make it easier for you to understand. The teacher is on your side, they want you to do well, and they're going to be happy that you gave them the opportunity to improve your grade and still answer the question. They're going to be really impressed that you were able to articulate your confusion in the target language. You will not be marked down for that. If anything, they're going to be more impressed with you and your tenacity. And also, a very small detail, but I think it does wonders in making you sound like a native speaker. Learn the kind of sounds that that language has, especially in the pauses. So for example, I'll take French again. A lot of the time when you pause between sentences, you use the sound E. So, je ne suis pas sûre, blah blah blah, I don't know. My French is so great. But in English, in the pauses, you'd say more of an and an If you make sure you replace any pause sound like that with the French one when you're speaking French, you will sound so much better. I promise you. So it doesn't matter if you keep pausing as you're trying to think, because you're still going to be sounding French and your teacher's going to be like, damn. So yeah, I really recommend doing some research on that for obviously whatever your language is. Just watching YouTube or TV shows or films, you'll hear it probably pretty early on. It's very normal to pause in whatever language. It doesn't matter how fluent you are. It's just about making those pauses sound right. Those are just a few of the tips that I've come up with for you guys. I definitely have more. I feel like this is a very rich territory for advice and tips, so please let me know if you'd be interested in a part 2 or more videos specific to other kind of language assessments and how you can ace those as well. But anyway, I hope these really helped you out. Please let me know how you get on with your upcoming assessments, and happy studying.